Welcome to the Mind of Business Success podcast. I'm your host, Alicia Cramer. Our guest today is Margy Feldhuhn, and we are going to talk about podcasting. Welcome to the show, Margy.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, let's talk a little bit about what you've got going on first in your business so that our listeners really get a sense of what you are doing with Interview Connect. So let's start there. Can you talk a little bit about your business?
Yes. So I am the CEO and co-owner of Interview Connections, and we book entrepreneurs as guests on podcasts so that they can get more visible, get more clients, connect and build relationships with hosts and audiences, and grow their business through this amazing organic strategy. So we have been doing this since 2013. I have been part of the business since 2016, and it's kind of meta because we've also used this strategy to grow Interview Connections. So we grew from 0 to 7 figures with no paid ads heavily because of podcast guesting and this strategy. And Jess and I, my business partner, both continue to get out there consistently as guests on podcasts, both to grow our businesses, but also, to make friends, to meet new people and the hosts, have new connections, and to really have an impact. I mean, for me, yes, I get clients for Interview Connections when I go on shows, but I also really think it's powerful to share your story and to have new people hearing you and relating to you and realizing that they're not alone. And I think that's one of the most powerful pieces of it.
Your story is really inspirational, and it is a powerful way to convey just how effective this can be in business. And I just want to say that comes across as almost being very tactical, but what we're really talking about here is being very authentic and connecting with people in a very, very meaningful way, because we're not Coca-Cola, right? I mean, Coca-Cola has to put cute little bears and Santa Claus, to try to create the warm and fuzzies. What we're talking about here is just being human and relatable and allowing people to feel the essence of who you are. And when you have that opportunity to share your story and connect with someone in that deeper, more meaningful way, you create not only potential clients and customers, but advocates for who you are and what you do. So I would love for you to take our listeners through your story.
Yes. So I'm so honored to be on your show because I love what you're doing so much. And I really relate to your journey because I grew up with a lot of mental health issues and depression, anxiety, OCD, had times of being very suicidal. And I grew up in a home with mentally ill parents. It was hoarded. So it's so funny now to look back and have people call me inspirational, because it really didn't look inspirational for a really long time. I was very unconscious. I was very angry. I sometimes wonder if people who knew me back then see this and are like, is this just BS? Right. See what's on social media, because it's such a transformation. So I had a very unhappy childhood, both for external reasons, but also internally, I was in such a bad place that I didn't even see all the gifts I actually also had around me and all the great people. And I finally got out of the house, out of my parents' house. I was traveling because I love to travel, which partly I think was escape, but also the presence that you can get from being in a new place is so powerful. And even when you're in a bad place, can kind of get breakthrough, I found. So I got really addicted to that travel. I moved to Asia to teach English after I graduated from college because I had no idea what I wanted to do. I majored in art and Latin, and I wasn't going to be a Latin professor or an artist. So I was like, well, I'll travel. I moved to Asia. I lived in Taiwan for 2 years and was kind of in that low grade, anxious and depressed all the time. That had become very normal to me. And I had done therapy. I had been medicated from the age of like 11 on antidepressants, and then eventually was able to go off them in my 20s. But that it was very normal to me, that kind of low grade anxiety and unhappiness. And in 2015, I had been in Asia for 2 years teaching, had kind of a nice life, but also was very unhappy most of the time. But I was like into personal development. So I'm like, I loved Eckhart Tolle, and I could feel that those moments of presence when I would read his stuff and stuff like that. And I also got really into The Secret. So I'm like so high strung and depressed and anxious, but I'm like aggressively trying to manifest things. Not really realizing I was really missing the piece of being actually happy and in a receiving mode. So I'm like, journaling all this stuff about what I want, like I actually have it in this place that's so clearly out of sync with those things, but not realizing it. And my dad, I'm really close with my parents. I'm an only child. And my dad had some like heart issues, and not deadly heart issues, but I was really nervous about it. So every day for 2 years, I wrote in my gratitude journal, because I was writing gratitude for what I wanted to happen to manifest it. I wrote every day how grateful I was for my dad's health and happiness for 2 years. And then in 2015, I found out that my dad had died by suicide. So I threw out my gratitude journal and I had to rebuild my life. It had always been one of my biggest fears to lose one of my parents, because as much as they had mental health problems, there was such an anxious attachment there. And I love my parents. They're great people. They really are, but they have their own issues. And I was so scared of one of my parents dying. It was one of those things I would ruminate on. And it was just, you know what I mean? I would imagine it and I would like get to the point where I'd be like crying, it was just this thing. I was like, I can't imagine I'd be able to survive this. And suddenly it happened in a second. And it was a really intense experience. And a lot of stuff, a lot of who I was and who I thought I was kind of broke apart, because suddenly, like all those things that feel like you can't cancel them, they're canceled, right? Like I quit my job. I called my boss and I quit like right after I found out. If you had asked me the day before, will you just call and quit your teaching job? Of course not. I can't do that. Suddenly, though, there's no rules anymore. So my world broke apart and I moved home. I helped my mom organize the memorial. And then this house was hoarded that my parents lived in. And I had been wanting to clean it out for them since before my dad died. I was also journaling about that every day, how grateful I was for my parents' clean house. And I couldn't leave my mom like this in the house. And it felt like the only way I could do something, right? Like contribute, take care of my family. So I embarked on this cleaning project. I spent 5 months cleaning out this house. I had a gigantic dumpster. I had to figure out how to hire people. I had never done anything like this before. I really hadn't done a lot, right? Because I had such a bad mindset. I would just quit everything I started and then beat myself up about it. But for the first time, I had something really hard that I couldn't quit, or I felt like I couldn't quit. And for the first time, I pushed through. So like every time I got a no, every time I hit a problem at the house I didn't know how to solve, I didn't feel like I had a choice. So I kept going. And by doing that, I was able to see what was actually possible, which was so much more than I thought I was capable of. And do something that in my mind, growing up in that hoarded house, it was my whole life, right? It was just my reality. And I hated it. I'm the type of person, and most people I think are like this. I need to see clear open space. That's how I feel creative. That's how my nervous system feels calm. And living in a house where literally there's nowhere to sit down, there's no clear tables or surfaces to work on, it made me crazy. And to finally take that on and do it, I did it. 5 months of intense cleaning and the most bizarre things going wrong. I had like moth infestations, bursting pipes, cat pee, getting cat pee out of hardwood floors. I'm sorry if that's TMI, but it's very hard. But I did it. And it was this incredible moment, this incredible up level of realizing what I was capable of and of changing something that felt like it could never be changed. But we talked about this before going live. You hit an up level and you're like, great. And then you find a new problem. So I spend 5 months cleaning this house. And then right when we finish, I moved to Colorado with my partner at the time who was going to grad school because that was the plan. But there was so much. I hadn't gone to therapy to like deal with what happened with my dad dying. And so I went with all my unprocessed trauma. So much of my grief wasn't processed because I had thrown myself into cleaning the house, which was therapeutic in many ways. But there was a lot of stuff I really hadn't dealt with. And I had this thing to keep me busy all day, every day. And suddenly I'm in Colorado. I have no job. I don't know anyone. I have no friends. I have no family there. I'm not in therapy. And I was there for a year. And it was basically like, you think you hit rock bottom. I thought I hit rock bottom when my dad died. Then I hit rock bottom again in Colorado. I was so dysregulated. I was so angry. I was afraid. I wanted to be home. I didn't want to leave the house. And my partner, who's did a great job and is a very patient person, but it's very hard to deal with someone who's at that level of just mental problems and breakdown. And he, needed to go out and make friends. He was new in this town at this school in this program. He wanted to be with his new cohort, like very naturally. And I didn't want to leave the house. I didn't want him to leave me. Like I didn't want to talk to new people. And I was very angry, and it would manifest in like picking fights and just, it was not a good look. It was really, I'm really not proud of who I was because I was just in such extreme distress. And eventually the relationship ended, understandably, because I was not someone that anyone would recommend you date. Like I had so much unprocessed trauma. And so I hit another rock bottom because when we broke up, I had to move home to my mom's house in Rhode Island. So I loaded up a U-Haul. My uncle helped me drive. I had my 2 elderly cats in the car and made the drive back from Colorado to Rhode Island after only a year in Colorado, which really felt like a failure. Going back to live in my mom's house, although it was clean and there was space for me now, which was kind of nice. But it felt like rock bottom. But the one thing I had is I had gotten this $15 an hour contractor booking agent job for Interview Connections while I was in Colorado. And so I was able to keep my job because it was remote. So I kept working for Interview Connections. I got really serious about therapy. I found an amazing EMDR practitioner to help me process my trauma. I went on a lot of long walks. I did a lot of personal development and reflection. And I was asked a few months later, the beginning of 2017, to become the first employee of Interview Connections. So I came into that young startup company having done all of this work on my mindset and my trauma, and showed up so resilient and so powerful that I was really like the exact type of person you want as that first key employee to be building out a company. And so no matter what happened, we had people quitting, we had the typical drama that you have with a business, but I was unfazed after everything I had done and been through. And I had processed all this trauma. So I wasn't getting triggered. I was able to really show up powerfully and lead and deal with people, even if they were triggered, and grow the business. And we accomplished so much. And Jess knew that I wanted to be a business owner and that she probably couldn't keep me as an employee for too much longer. And we entered into negotiations about Interview Connections. I asked for 50% equity. I laid out exactly how I could make that investment ROI for her. I showed her exactly. I said, look, I can get this business from 400,000 a year to $1 million in 1 year. Here's my plan. And she said, yes.
And here you are.
Yeah.
So I wanted you to share the story because it is so powerful. No matter where we are, no matter how bad it is, everyone has within them the potential to create an incredible life, but it does require work. And when I'm working with clients, I often have to remind them when they're hitting their resistance, it's natural, it's normal, it's okay. It doesn't mean that all of the work that you've done up to this point is irrelevant. It just means you've bumped up against something in your subconscious that you need to clean up. It's so easy for people to get so discouraged. And a lot of people, especially in business, we see this, the failure rates are quite high. And that is because a lot of people bump up against those internal obstacles. And they're feeling the depression and the frustration and the anger. And they have so many stories in their mind about how they can't and they won't and it won't work. And then they start to see the evidence. And business is it's not always an easy game. So a big part of this show is about inspiring people to find the strength within themselves to persevere, to break through, to push past what appears to be failure, setbacks, obstacles. And I love the fact that you have sort of that happy ending and really you're still just creating, you're still just growing. Another year from now, you're going to have even more of the quote happy ending, right? It's just going to keep getting better, but that doesn't mean that there won't be setbacks and challenges and obstacles and things that you have to do to work on your inner game in the process. So it's such a beautiful story. It really illustrates, and you don't have to be that low. I mean, that's something we talked about before we started recording, right? You don't have to necessarily be at the rock bottom. Sometimes rock bottom is you failed yourself. You set a goal, you knew you could accomplish it, you bumped up against your old fears, doubts, and insecurities, and you let it get the best of you. And one day you look in the mirror and you're like, not acceptable anymore. I can't do this to myself anymore. I know too much. I've come too far. I know it's possible. I am the reason that I did not achieve that goal. I gave up on myself and I'm not going to do it anymore. I've created a mantra for myself over the years. I'm going to do it right this time, because I have failed at so many things and I have given up on myself so many times. And even though maybe by other people's standards, it's, it's like, wow, you've accomplished so much, but I'm still human, right? And so I have seen this pattern within myself, and I encourage everyone to look within themselves as well. There are those tendencies. You're going to see patterns within yourself in your life where something gets a little uncomfortable, something gets a little hard, especially in certain areas where you haven't done the inner work yet, and you allow that to be your excuse for giving up, stepping back, playing small, and not going for what your heart is calling you to do.
Yeah. I love that so much. And it is inner work, because if I had showed up with my old mindset, I would never be here. I would probably have quit Interview Connections, thinking like, oh, this isn't really what I want to do. I would have kept trying other things. Like, it really was the perfect opportunity at the perfect time for my mindset. And looking back, I had a lot of other opportunities in the past, and I just didn't take advantage of them because I didn't have the right mindset. So it is hard work, but it's not the type of work people think. It's not like the tactics and strategies. Like, I'm a big fan of who, not how. Like, you can find people to help you with so much of the tactics and strategies, but the work is really, like you're saying, that inner work, and understanding that it never ends, being able to look at when you hit something and get curious about, like, what am I hitting here? What do I need to get past this? Who do I need to bring in to help me? Like somebody like you. Sometimes you're just so stuck and you're like, I need I need a coach. I need somebody. So who is that person who's going to help you to the next level? And then just knowing that, because I like what you said, it does feel like a failure, because I used to think, okay, I've made it, like the story's over, happy ending. And then something else would happen, or I'd make another big mistake. And it would be that much more painful, because it was like, I must have been lying to myself before that I achieved something. Because if I really had this breakthrough, I wouldn't be making these mistakes again. And seeing the nature of it and accepting it, and looking at each roadblock that you hit with some curiosity. And it's helped. Practice really helps. Like, I went through the forced up level with my dad dying, and I love owning a business because it's such a personal development journey. It is such a game. And I'm forced to grow so much faster owning a business than I probably would if I was an employee somewhere, because it's like, I feel like every month I'm a different person, because the transformation is happening so fast. The obstacles are coming so fast. And for me, I love that.
I love that you shared that. We talked a little bit about that before, and it's something that I think I've even mentioned on maybe one or two other episodes, but it's so worth repeating. When you commit to growing, when you commit to creating something big, creating a successful business, growing your income, stepping outside of your old paradigms and creating something new and more empowering for yourself, being more of a deliberate creator of your own life, it really is like putting your foot on the accelerator. And the faster you go, the more bugs are going to hit your windshield. So when I'm working with a client who is feeling the frustration at bumping up against so much inner turbulence, so much inner resistance, I have to remind them, well, you are on the accelerated path. And that comes with the territory, because we have this tendency when we're looking up at someone who appears to have achieved all of this success. They've got the big house, they've got the nice cars, they've got the money in the bank, they have the status and the prestige, and they're, rubbing elbows with all of the, upper tier people. There's this tendency to be kind of sitting down here, looking up there with these unrealistic expectations, these unreasonable beliefs that somehow it's easy for them, that they didn't have the inner turmoil and that early stage resistance that they had to break through. And that once you get to a certain level, it's all just rainbows and butterflies all the time. And that's just simply not true. A lot of my clients are very successful by other people's standards, and they still are going through all the same types of stuff. Might be slightly different, but I'll tell you, It's not uncommon as a business mindset coach to be working with my clients on dealing with their marriages and because when we focus a lot on creating in one area of our life, talking here about business now, it is so common to be neglecting the other areas of our life where we have so much pain, so many disempowering, self-imposed limitations. And when you get to a certain point, you're going to hit a rock bottom in that area of your life. And now you've got to deal with that. So it's not always what it appears to be. And yet, I wouldn't trade it for anything. And I'm sure you agree. And I know my clients who have successful businesses, they're still inspired to grow. They're still feeling the resistance to up level to those new levels. But we're all still human. And I always say we've got a lifetime worth of conditioning that does not always support success and happiness. And while it can be really wonderful to achieve certain milestones and certain accomplishments, and we certainly always want to appreciate those things and practice gratitude and keep our vibration high and keep our mindset right, doesn't mean that's to the exclusion of the other stuff that we're still going to have to deal with and work through.
Yeah, I love that so much. And I think it feels different. Like when you achieve things that your past self would have been like, wow, that person's really successful. I think what a lot of people aren't prepared for, and I wasn't prepared for, is you never feel like you've arrived. Because there's always more and there's always somebody who's achieved more. And I'm getting the feeling that that's probably true at every level. Like even the people that I look up to and the people that they look up to, it just sort of never stops. And I think it's so valuable to have personal growth as your main goal, because then no matter what happens, you're winning. Whether you're feeling really bad, you're winning, right? Because you're at that breakdown that's going to be followed by the breakthrough, like you say. When you're feeling really great, you're winning. And even knowing that it never lasts forever, you're still winning. You don't have to be afraid, because if the goal is growth, everything that happens to you becomes a gift. And that was a mindset shift that has really helped me be successful in business and in my life, because, and I'm not perfect. Like there's still times when things go wrong and I'm like, why? But I usually get to that point of seeing the gift in the contrast and the things going wrong. Because if personal growth is your ultimate aim, then every time you uncover a new issue that you have or a new insecurity you haven't dealt with, it's such a gift.
So true. So true. We could go on and on and on and on and on. And we are at the end of our time. So I want to make sure that you share with our listeners how they can connect with you.
Yes. So my company website, Interview Connections, is at interviewconnections.com. And that's a great place to go if you're an entrepreneur who's interested in being booked as a guest on podcasts and getting out there with your message. I also have a personal website, which is margywithahardg.com. And that's where my blog lives. And I have a podcast about high performers and grief called We Get It, Your Dad Died. So if that's the type of thing you're looking for, then that would be a good website.
Awesome. Margy, thank you so much for being with us and sharing your story. It is incredibly inspiring. And I completely relate to what you said about, looking back in retrospect, it did not feel inspiring going through the shitstorm. It did not feel good. And at that point, you don't see what's possible. I remember driving in my car. I was going to work. This was obviously a very long time ago. And I must have just been in a more receptive state in that moment, because I had an aha moment. It almost felt like, without getting too mystical and too metaphysical and too woo-woo for people, but it really did feel like it was divine guidance telling me that I had to go through everything I went through early on in my life so that I could understand and help other people. And that helped me to shift from thinking and feeling like a victim about my past and all of the pain that I experienced to feeling like it was a gift. So with that, I want to thank you again. And of course, we have to thank all of our listeners. We're doing this for you. If you haven't already subscribed, please make sure you do so. And until next time, we will see you in the next episode.